All right, everybody, what's up? I kind of got a little tied up. I had a phone call I had to take, pretty important phone call, so I was going to like type up some big description and stuff like that. I'm waiting for somebody to get on here. Like, I'm hoping this microphone. It's showing that it's on. I see all these influencers, not even influencers, but people on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, stuff like that, that put their mic up there. It's supposed to hide it with the stuff in the background. So let's see if anybody gets on. I told y'all it's gonna be 7 o'clock, man. I put this out a couple of days ago. Was it yesterday? Was it yesterday I put this out? Yeah. Let's see. Trying to see. Oh, Josh. Josh, you're on there. Hey, type in real quick if you can hear me. Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down or something that my microphone's working. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Can you hear me? Anybody? Anybody hear me? Anybody hear me? Josh, you can hear me. Okay, I'm hoping that's what that thumbs up means. Cool. Now, who else is on here? I don't know. They're not showing up. Yeah, I see that. Okay, anyway. All right, well, so Josh is watching. So anyway, I told you I was going to do this at 7 o'clock, but look, I've been studying about this one. I actually had some time today to kind of narrow it down. I was going to try to do something cool with some stuff like CapCut and all that stuff. And I don't know how to do that. I don't know how these people on that do the social media videos. I don't know how they do that. Maybe I gotta find somebody that's smarter than I am, a toddler or something, to do this. But anyway, so here's what the study was going or is going to be about, and I kind of mentioned it on one of my posts maybe yesterday or the day before. But like I got to reading through the book of Job, and you know a lot of people talk about the book of Job, but they talk about the front part of it, I guess, the front to the middle of it, about the trials of Job, with um, God allowing Satan to test him and put him through all these trials where he loses his family and loses all of his fortune, and but Job still loves God and Job's still faithful. And those are great stories. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that we shouldn't preach and teach on Job's trials because they're great stories. But it's like most preachers and pastors, Sunday school teachers, and whatnot, will get about to the middle of Job and be like, "Oh well, we're going to study something else." So what I done was I was reading through Job and I got to the end of Job, and these are this kind of I'm gonna do a multi-part thing here, but this first one is part of Job's vision. Job's this is actually God talking to Job. Um, God comes to Job in a whirlwind and talks to him and gives him, this lesson, I guess you'd say, and he uses um, an illustration of a creature called the Behemoth. Now, when we think about Behemoth, in our modern context, we think of something huge, this massive creature, or this massive thing, whatever. You talk about you know, that airplane. It was a Behemoth. It was massive. It was huge, and um, that's what God calls this creature when He goes to Job in verse 40. Um, oh, sorry, but I'm wanting to focus, and we're going to talk all about Job Job 40:15 into the end, but you know, there's about 10 verses, but I want to focus on two in particular, Job 40:15 and Job 40:19. And when I got to studying on this, I was like, okay, so is there some type of correlation or even some type of difference? And I went through one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, excuse me, seven text translations, seven different translations of the Bible. And then I also went through three or four online, um, to see how God and Job described this creature called Behemoth. So I'm like, what I want y'all to do is know that I didn't come to this lesson lightly. I didn't kind of take it just off the cuff. I really did study this because it laid hard on me. So um, I want to focus on, like I said, I want to focus on 40:15 and 40:19. And now there's moments in Scripture when God answers a human's questions not by explaining every mystery, but by pointing to what He's made. Now, if you're watching or listening today, you know that matters because all of us have seasons when we want answers from God. In Job 40, the Lord speaks to Job out of a whirlwind and says, "Look now at Behemoth." Now, He don't say, "Look now at thee," or "Look now at a." He says, "Look now at Behemoth." He uses it as a noun, as a name. It says, "Look now at Behemoth, which I made along with you." God points Job to a creature of extraordinary strength and mystery, not just so Job can admire it, but so Job can learn something about the Creator. Behemoth becomes a living testimony that God was working before Job even understood, before Job questioned, and even before mankind stood in the earth with dominion. So stay with me today because Behemoth's going to teach us about creation, humility, and the greatness of God. So our focus is on Job 40:15 and Job 40:19. Now Job 40:15 says, "Look now at Behemoth, which I made along with you. He eats grass like an ox." Now verse 19 says, "He is the first of the ways of God. Only He who made him can bring near His sword." Now these two verses tell us how to read the passage. Behemoth, it's not introduced as just some random beast, but as a deliberate work of God's hand. He's created by God, connected to mankind's creation, and presented as first or chief among God's works. Now, when God says Behemoth was made along with you, He reminds Job that both man and beast share the same creator. Mankind did not arrive in the universe of his own making. Humanity was placed into a world already ordered by God, surrounded by creatures that reveal God's glory. And when God calls Behemoth the first of the ways of God, He shows us that this creature is mighty, but still created. He's chief among beasts, but still under the hand of the Maker. Now, I've got 3 points here I want to try to get to, and the first one, it's where Behemoth shows the greatness of God's creation. The first command in verse 15, it's simple. It says, "Look." God tells Job to behold Behemoth. And that's a word for us too, because before we rush past the text, before we turn this into a debate, before we try to explain everything away, God says, "Look." This creature is not introduced as an accident of nature, as a product of chance. God says, "I made him." This is where this begins. Behemoth belongs to God, because Behemoth was made by God. Now, picture him for a moment. Picture Behemoth. Behemoth rises out of the river like a living mountain. He feeds on grass like an ox, but his frame is nothing like an ox. Strength is gathered in his hips, power is packed in his belly, and the muscles of his thighs are woven together like cords. His bones are like tubes of bronze, his limbs like bars of iron, and his tail moves like a cedar swaying with weight and force. He settles beneath the lotus plants. He's shaded by trees, unshaken when the river rises. If the waters rush, he does not panic. He stands there as a monument of God's craftsmanship, massive, ordered, mysterious, and completely under the authority of the one who made him. Now, let's see here. I'm reading this off of, I'm reading scripture off of two screens, so y'all just have to give me a minute. Let's talk about real quick. Let's go to, now this is out of the CSB. Let's go to 40:15. It says, now I'm going to read you the whole thing. It says, look at Behemoth, which I have made along you. He eats grass like, this is the CSB. It says, he eats grass like a cattle. Look at the strength of his back and the power of his muscles in his belly. He stiffens his tail like a cedar tree. The tendons of his thighs are woven firmly together. His bones are bronze tubes. His limbs are like iron rods. He is the foremost of God's work. Only his maker can draw the sword against him. The hills yield food for him while all sorts of wild animals play there. He lies under the lotus plants, hiding in the protection of marshy reeds. Lotus plants cover him with their shade. The willows by the brook surround him. Though the river rages, Behemoth is unafraid. He remains confident even if the Jordan surges up to his mouth. Can anyone capture him while he looks on or pierce his nose with snares? Okay, so that's God's description of Behemoth. And, you know, when God describes that, he describes this mighty, massive creature. And, you know, I've done, through all those different books that I studied, a lot of those are study Bibles. And I would look down at the notes and I would look at some of the commentaries I have behind me. And a lot of these people are like, oh, well, he was describing a hippopotamus. And now the hippo, okay, it's certainly strong. I think I read somewhere that hippo is accounts for more human deaths in Africa than any other creature on that continent. So yeah, it's a strong, fierce animal. And it's certainly at home in and near the water. But Job's description seems to kind of reach beyond a hippo. Now, the strongest clue is the tail. Scripture says Behemoth moves his tail like a cedar. Now, anybody, I'm going to use a little bit of a kind of morbid Facebook video here. Anybody ever seen the hippo in the enclosure and the people are getting too close to the fence and the hippo poops and its little tail goes flying around, it slings poop all over everybody like a helicopter? Okay, its tail was like a foot or 2 foot long, maybe this big around. It's not this massive cedar as it's described to us in Job. Now, hippo has a short, small tail, but the image of a cedar suggests something long and strong and very prominent. The passage also describes bones like bronze, limbs like iron, and a creature called the first in the ways of God. Now, stay with me. This is just my thought. I read that and I don't see a hippo. I see a dinosaur. The language just fits more naturally with a massive dinosaur-like creature than just some common river animal. But now hear me clearly on this, okay? That was just a caveat. You know, the point's not to chase curiosity. The point's to see what God wanted Job to see. Whether people debate the creature's identity or not, the text presents Behemoth as a creature so great that man cannot master it. Yet God made it and rules over it. If Behemoth were dinosaur-like, then its size and strength could only make the lesson louder. Creation is greater than human control, but it's never greater than the Creator. Okay? I just kind of wanted to add that little caveat as I was reading. This is what I seen. I didn't see a hippopotamus. I saw a bronchosaurus, because it, it eats grass like a ox. So take that for what you will. That's just my little me being me. But now, point two I want to put here is the Behemoth shows that God prepared the earth before man's dominion. Now, listen closely to the phrase God uses, which I made along with you. That phrase ties Behemoth and mankind together under the same creative authority. Job's being reminded that he is not above creation as though he were its source. He is part of creation, dependent on the same God who made the beasts of earth. Okay? Put yourself, when I say Job, say me. Okay? We're just part of the creation. We are not the creator. Everything that roams this earth is because of God, not because of us. Before mankind ever exercised dominion, Behemoth already belonged to God. That means the world was not built around our human pride. It was built by God, for God's glory, and according to God's purpose. Behemoth teaches that creation has value before it's useful to human hands. Its worth did not begin when man named it, managed it, studied it, or benefited from it. Its worth began when God made it. Behemoth's existence says to Job, there are things in God's world that are not centered on your control. Look here, that's us. There's things around here that don't have nothing to do with us. Okay? We can't control it. We can't understand it. We can't explain it. It's for God's glory because God created it. Whatever it may be, it's because God. Okay? It has nothing to do with us, our egos, our pride, our sin nature has nothing to do with it. It's all because of God. And once we come to that realization that it's because of God, for God, through God, and for God's glory, then things will get a little bit more clear to us. Behemoth shows us that God already prepared an ordered world before mankind even stepped into dominion. If Behemoth stood in creation before mankind exercised dominion, then his presence reminds us that God was arranging the earth before man even arrived to enjoy it, cultivate it, and steward it. Behemoth was not an interruption in creation. Behemoth was a part of the Creator's ordering work, a mighty testimony that God prepared the earth with life, strength, balance, and wonder before placing mankind even within it. If Behemoth was dinosaur-like, its very size would preach preparation. Such a creature would require a world capable of sustaining immense life, vegetation, water sources, space to grow, and order. God was not improvising when mankind arrived. He had already formed an earth rich enough, strong enough, and ordered enough to support life on a grand scale. Behemoth becomes evidence that God prepared abundance before he gave man responsibility. Now, here's the word for us. Mankind did not step into chaos and make it meaningful. Mankind stepped into a world God had already made meaningful. We do not give creation its value, God does. We do not make the earth sacred by using it. It belongs to the Lord. Before man ever worked the ground, God had already prepared the ground, filled it with life, and declared his wisdom through what he had made. That truth confronts the arrogance that often rises in the human heart. We can begin to think creation exists only for us, and that every creature must be measured by its usefulness. But Behemoth reminds us that God delights in what he has made. The creature's strength, independence, and mystery all preach the same message. God is creator, and mankind is not the center of creation, but God is. Now let's go to my third point. Behemoth points us back to Genesis and then forward to worship. The Lord does not present Behemoth as chaos. He presents Behemoth as a creature with a place, a diet, a body, and a purpose. He says he eats grass like an ox. Even this mighty creature is not outside God's care. It lives within the boundaries God established. And that carries us back to Genesis 1, where God creates the living creature of the earth and then creates mankind in his image. Genesis gives mankind dignity and dominion, but in Job, it gives mankind humility. Together, they teach us that creation is ordered by God, sustained by God, and ruled by God. Now, in Genesis 1:24 through 26, it shows the order. First, the living creatures according to their own kinds, then mankind made in the image of God and given dominion. This does not lower mankind's dignity, but it does remind us that mankind entered a world already formed by God's command and filled with God's creatures. That matters for how we read Job 40. When God tells Job, I made Behemoth along with you, he's reminding Job of a shared origin. Man and beast are not equal in calling, because mankind alone is made in the image of God. Yet man and beast are both creatures. Both owe their existence to the same Creator. Both stand under the authority of the same Lord. Dominion does not mean ownership apart from God. Dominion is stewardship under God. And verse 19 says, he is the first in the ways of God. Behemoth is chief or foremost among God's works, a creature of remarkable strength and majesty. Yet even the chief of created things is still under the Creator's hands. The greatness of Behemoth does not compete with the greatness of mankind in God's image. Instead, it magnifies the greatness of the God who made them both. So Job 40 and Genesis 1, they speak together. Genesis shows us that the Creator ordered the world. Job shows us that the Creator pointing to one of his mightiest creatures and saying, hey, look. Genesis says man is made in God's image. Job says man must still bow before God's wisdom. And for everyone watching today, this is the balance that we need. We are honored creatures, but still creatures. Rulers under God, not rulers in place of God. So what do we do with Behemoth? We behold him rightly. God did not point Job to this creature merely to show him a strong animal. He pointed Job to Behemoth to show him the greatness of the Creator. I made him along with you. He is the first in the ways of God. These two truths humble us and lift our eyes. Behemoth reminds us that God's world existed before our control, that creation was meaning that creation has meaning before our usefulness, and that mankind's dominion must always remain under God's authority. Genesis tells us that mankind is made in God's image, and Job reminds us that mankind is still made by God's hand. We are not the source of creation. We are not the measure of all things. We are creatures made by God, placed in a world full of wonders, made by God, and called to worship the God who rules over all he has made. So, wherever you're watching from, behold Behemoth rightly. Not as an object of fear, not as an idol of strength, and not as a creature measured only by a human usefulness, but as a witness to the Creator. Before mankind ruled, God created. Before mankind understood, God ordered. Before mankind questioned, God was already wise. And if God could make Behemoth and hold Behemoth under his authority, then he is worthy of our trust today. The greatness of Behemoth should make us say, how great is the God who made me? So what I want y'all to take away from that is, before man, God was preparing all this for man. God wasn't creating this world as our throne room, but as our dominion, the place where we live and have authority under God. And he created this Behemoth, but he goes to Job and says, look, hey, look what I can do. Look what I did. Look at all these things. See what God has done for us. And that's what he tells Job. He says, look, look now at Behemoth, which I made along with you. I made you, and I made this, in my studies, I made massive dinosaurs, and I made you too. I believe that he made these dinosaurs before humans to walk the earth and eat plants. You know what happens when you eat something? It goes in one side and comes out the other. Well, an animal that eats a lot of plants makes a lot of fertilizer, and fertilizer helps more plants grow. And I think that's what he done for us. He had these dinosaurs roaming the earth, and they helped the earth grow. They packed down the soil, because we know that in Genesis it talks about the earth was volcanoes. Okay, what's the last thing y'all heard? Man, these mics, I'm gonna have to. All right. My wonderful wife comes in and tells me where I was at. Dinosaur pooping earth. But so anyway, maybe that was maybe the Lord told me to just shut up right there. So But what I'm saying is, when I went into this, I went into it looking at Behemoth, and when I come out of it, I was looking past Behemoth and looking how great the Behemoth was and how great God would have been to, how great God is to have created something the size of Behemoth. I mean, but look, next week we're going to continue on in Job. Give me just a second. I'll tell y'all exactly where we're going to be. I want y'all, it's going to be, I'm going to try to do it another Wednesday. It might be Tuesday, depending. Job 40. Oh, man, my internet must be slow or something. Or I'm just hitting too many buttons on this computer too fast. Job 41. Job 41 is next week. Hey, read it. Just read it. Read it before I ever do my live thing. It's on Leviathan. Okay, Leviathan is similar to Behemoth. Behemoth was a land-based animal. Leviathan is a water-based creature. It kind of looks like a dragon. I was talking to the wife about this. There's cultures from Mesopotamia to the Far East, the ancient Far East, beyond feudal Japan, all the way to the Mayans and the Incans, the Native Americans, all the way up through Alaska, across the land bridge into Siberia, that have recorded documents in ancient times of dragons. So many different civilizations that could have never met, but all give the same description. That being said, we're going to dive into Leviathan in Job 41, and we're going to talk about him, her, it, whatever it is. And so I hope to see y'all next week. Let's see how this works out. Maybe I can charge up these mics and get them to where they actually work, and my sound won't quit. So, love y'all. I'll talk to y'all next week. Just read Job 40 and 41. It's an interesting read. So, see y'all next week.